What messages are we sending?
Every moment of our lives, we are sending messengers. Most of them are nonverbal cues of approval, disdain, or indifference to the actions of others around us. Yet the most effective messengers are the words that we choose to release from our tongues. And as that sound travels from our mouths to others' ears, connections are made of whether we speak of fear or care. Fear always moves the fastest. Fear forces a message on our neighbors and beyond about opinions that we might obtain in our hearts at that moment in time. And like the speed of information through modern technology, we understand this process of taking words that are forced upon us and allowing ourselves to move beyond those messages. But instead of moving too quickly from what we hear, we're called to wait in those words, to think before we speak, or even more importantly, to pray before we respond. At times, conflict messages come from our perceptions of how we see others, how they dress, what they eat, where they live, and what they stand for. We can take the rumor today from the gospel of an unkept man living alone in the woods who eats insects or beans mixed with some type of sap or honey. He's barely covered with an animal hair draped over him and is all put together with one belt. And a neighbor asks, "Where does he live?" And you point 30 feet up a limestone face and say, "He lives there." All the messages you have heard about this man do not make sense to you. But you go, you see, what is this spectacle we've heard? He grunts to clear his throat that a message is poured upon the people with such power and conviction that we are blown away. We are drawn to God. A true message eradicates any human focus on the material facets of this world. A true message focuses fully on God. And this is the message we receive from John the Baptist: wild in dress and cuisine accommodations, but wise in words. John lived in the simplest of ways. He humbled himself in all human standards in order to remain razor-focused on the invitation he came to give. This is the effect of John's message. This is the invitation for us to continue to share this message with others. It's also a reminder for us about all the messages we send ourselves. And there's no better time of the year than this time right now of Advent to take a step back and to ponder our messages. Why Advent? Because the material machine of this world is in full gear, forcing us to respond to numerous messages of consumption. What messages do we send to our kids and to our grandkids in regards to giving a gift at this time of the year? What messages do we send to our God, who yearns for us to open our hearts even wider to listen. John's message was simple, as John's life was simple, and it's still needed today, 2,000 years later, for us to hear. Last night I watched the movie It's a Wonderful Life. And a man named George Bailey wanted to do so many exciting things in his life. He wanted to get out of town and to have adventures and to travel and to buy things, but yet circumstances upon circumstances continue to call him to stay home and care for those in his community. He wrestles with this message at various times in the film, only to continue to submit. And in the very end of the film, he prays to God with this thought that maybe if I wasn't born, that life would be better for others. And an angel comes and spends time with him, and they go and they see what the community would look like if he never existed. And allowed George to see what his message was to those around him, a message of caring for them, helping folks not to focus on money and earthly treasures, but to remain close to the ways that we live together. And it reminds us that sin is often seen as a way of understanding that the world isn't fair. We never can fall into a sense of being entitled by what we expect God should give us. But we live in the simplicity of compassion towards others. We live in that desire of building up our character around the model and the lessons of Jesus. For George's message, much like John the Baptist, modeled how we can get straight. Words that were authentic because they worked out the own straightness within their own lives first. In that great humility, the straightness of God was able to be presented through John the Baptist and to direct us how we can live in God's presence. And the power of that invitation of welcoming people into God's presence brought people from Judea and Jerusalem and that whole region to come to John and to listen and to be. Yet with this enormous draw to come to John, John continued to say, "No, not me." John continued to point to the one who was to come. And it helps us to know that we live here for the benefit of others. And we don't allow the material world to focus on us or to distract us. It helps us to know that we have a gift to give to each other, a gift that sometimes can be troubled in our hearts. So we think about this time of the year when we're giving gifts to other people, and in our hearts, are we hoping that this gift will represent something good or positive about me, or is it simply given out of love? John's message in Mark's Gospel gives us a force to wake up. For if we have fallen asleep, to wake up and to listen and to discern and to draw closer to God by moving away from the limited ways that we might focus on me. Letting go of any of those crooked messages that might be out there, even that we could have lived into yesterday. Letting them go so that we can move into this world of straightness that God gives us. For God gives us a path to go forward, to move beyond the obstacles of this world around us. where we can hear that a voice is crying out in the wilderness, "Prepare the way of the Lord, make straight a path in the desert. Let every valley to be lifted up and every plain to be made smooth." For Christianity begins today. Christianity is a message of good news. And our invitation is to see how we can share that good news with others by not only how we live, but also how we speak into this world that we walk. Wanting to be a messenger of goodness, wanting the gift of Christ to be born into our life again so that we can go out and share that gift with others, we can draw closer to God. Amen.